Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. I'm with Evan. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. We're ready for an awesome podcast. My baby's doing one week exactly from now, so we're really stoked. Maybe do a live podcast from the operating room. No, probably not, but maybe something that week. Give people some live updates. Evan, how are we doing, brother?
Life is good. It's back to school season, so all the school buses are around the city. And when people go back to school, all of our female clients, especially the teachers, they start having flare-ups of their symptoms. So we got to keep you under control, ladies and teachers and men teachers as well. Make sure you're taking your adaptogens. If you're going back to school and you're starting up your teaching again, this is a good time to whip out your adaptogen formulas and double the dose of those.
Love it. Totally makes sense. Also, congratulations on the new car. You got a great deal on a pre-owned Tesla, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's like driving a spaceship. I'm going to be putting up a YouTube video. Jack Cruz, who's a mutual friend of ours, he said, "Oh my God, Teslas are the worst cars for EMF." But that's actually not true. I've actually measured using several devices the EMF from a Tesla. It's actually not bad. It's actually less, believe it or not, than the Honda Accord that I was driving beforehand. Now, I didn't take a video of that, so people just have to take my word for it. But the Honda Accord in the back seat where the baby was, I was actually measuring 4 milligauss, which is a pretty high magnetic field. The Tesla is actually less than that. So more videos and content to come.
Unreal. Very cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, everything's going here on this front. I'm excited to chat with you about today's topic. Let's dive in. So we talked about blood tests in the past. We talked about the complete blood count, the CBC. All right, which has some really cool markers. We chatted about some of the anemia and B vitamin markers and such. Really cool stuff. Today, we wanted to chat about the comprehensive metabolic profile, the CMP for short. So really excited to chat about that. Now, let's go over what the CMP is. So off the bat, I'll just kind of give you the list here, and then we'll hit the most important ones. But number one, glucose, calcium. We have protein markers, albumin and total protein. We have electrolytes, including sodium, potassium, CO2, and chloride. We have some kidney markers / protein markers, including BUN and creatinine. And we have some liver markers, including ALP or alkaline phosphatase, ALT, which is alanine aminotransferase, or SGPT is the old one. And we have AST or aspartate aminotransferase, AST or SGOT for short. We have bilirubin as well. So let's start off first at just some of the simple ones. So we have glucose. That's a really good kind of general marker. That marker is going to be used to look at diabetes, right? 126 or higher is going to be your diabetes marker. And again, 110 or higher for pre-diabetes. And then typically our functional range is going to be greater than 100 in the morning is going to be a good general indicator. Again, glucose fasting is kind of a late stage indicator. It's not something we want to use as our way to pick up blood sugar abnormalities in general. I like looking at a functional glucose tolerance. Kind of, you can look at fasting in the morning. Sometimes that can be higher from a cortisol or stress response, otherwise known as the dawn phenomenon or the Somogyi effect. Typically, I like to look at fasting glucose during the day from a functional perspective. So we do a functional glucose tolerance. We test it fasting, let's say breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And then we look at a 1, 2, 3 hour post meal and just see how that blood sugar is responding. We like below 140 in an hour, below 120 in 2 hours, and then below 100 in 3. That's a good general rule of thumb. Ideally below 120 in 1 hour, and then back around 110 to 100 within 2 hours, and definitely below 103. That's kind of my range. The goal is less blood sugar means less insulin spiking, which is a good thing.
Yeah, which means less fat storage too. So when we're talking about people with a fat loss goal, you've got to have relatively low insulin to be able to do that. If you've got high insulin all the time because you're eating refined carbs and sugars, blood sugar goes up, insulin goes up, you can't burn fat. So that's a really good foundational marker to hit on.
Absolutely. I think we need to get Topo Chico is a sponsor for the show. I love Topo Chico. It's like kind of like the sparkling Pellegrino we use here in Texas. It's kind of like a Mexican sparkling water. Absolutely love it.
Why don't you email them?
I will. I'll email them. I'll make them our show sponsor. I mean, this stuff is awesome, man. Plus, it's like, I used to be a soda addict when I was younger, and I kind of had those, nostalgic memories of drinking out of the glass Coke bottle. So it kind of brings it back here.
We need to email them and just tell them, man. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask. So put that on your to-do list for today.
We'll get Lululemon as a show sponsor, and then we'll get Topo Chico as a show sponsor.
That sounds great.
And hey, while you're at it, we might as well reach out to Elon Musk and see if we can get Tesla on board, man. That'd be nice for some complimentary free cars.
That'd be great. I don't know if that'll happen with the demand right now.
I know. I don't think it would happen. We're not the Joe Rogan podcast yet, but maybe someday, right?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So any comments on the blood sugar piece we just brought up?
Yeah, the blood sugar, you're always going to get that run. So this podcast, people may say, why are you doing this on blood? And you guys focus on functional medicine. Well, because a lot of people, anybody down the street, your neighbor, your friend, your family likely has some of the metabolic panel stuff that we're outlining today, plus the CBC from our other blood test podcast. And so this is designed where if you don't have functional labs, how can we help you to identify these basic labs that everyone under the sun has access to, regardless of what country you're in? So yeah, glucose, I think you killed it with that one in terms of the range. Let's move on. What else is on your plate here?
Well, we could chat about calcium too. So calcium is a pretty good marker just for overall blood calcium. Again, blood calcium has to drop down pretty low for there to be a nutritional deficiency in calcium. Yeah. One of the things that I look at when I see calcium go too low is potential hypochlorhydria. Well, number one, are we consuming enough leafy greens, right? That's going to be a major source of calcium. Salmon with the bones is a major source of calcium. Of course, some dairy products are going to be great, but it just depends, right? We'll choose grass-fed butter and ghee over any of the milk and cheese stuff. And if we're going to do milk and cheese, you want to make sure that we're not reacting to it. We're not autoimmune. And we're also, trying to choose raw organic sources to prevent the hormones, the antibiotics, and also have the enzymes intact to be able to process it. But when I see calcium go too high or too low, I think potentially nutrient deficiencies, number one, right? Not getting the right foods. And I also think low stomach acid and enzymes, number two. And then if I see calcium go high, a lot of times calcium can be utilized as an inflammatory mediator. So I'll also look at inflammatory markers when I see high calcium on the flip side.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah. So hypochlorhydria, these are the people who've been popping Tums because they've got heartburn, but in reality, they could have something like H. pylori infection, or they've been on prescription acid blockers, which are very, 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 very common. So if you're looking at your calcium, even if it's out, sometimes it may be out of the general reference range, let alone our functional range, then that's an issue. Do you have a functional range for us? Since a lot of people are in the US, we may be able to give the measure of units for calcium. Do you have that in front of you?
Typically, the calcium range, if I remember correctly, will be in the mid 9s. I think it's like low 8s to upper 10, or upper 8s to low 10s. So I like in the mid 9s is a pretty good place. Typically in the middle of the range tends to be okay. Okay. Any comments on the calcium component?
No, I think you're doing good. I'm just going to kind of walk your hand through this. What's next on our list?
Yeah. So again, I like kind of the middle of the reference range. So next would be protein markers. All right. So we have a couple of protein markers. We have albumin and total protein. And then we also have BUN and creatinine. All right. Those are some pretty good markers that we utilize off the bat when it comes to protein. So number one, I like creatinine above 0.79. It's a pretty good place to go, right? Above 0.79. So for below 0.79, there may be some low protein. And creatinine is a breakdown product of protein as well. All right, it's a breakdown product. So above 0.79, if creatinine's too high, there could potentially be some inflammation going on. It's very possible there could be some inflammation happening. There could be a high workout happening where we had did a lot of exercise the day before, and that we're breaking down a lot of amino acids from the muscle. Right, that's one component. And then next is just inflammation too, right? There could be some breakdown from inflammation, like your body's more in a catabolic state and you're breaking down. But it can be a good window into protein levels, high or low. And then if we look at total protein, I like in the 7 or above is a pretty good place for total protein. If I see it lower, of course, I'm going to make sure, are we eating enough protein? Are we getting about half a gram per pound of body weight? It's a pretty good rule of thumb, right? They say like 1.2 grams per kilogram. Right? What does that mean? We don't think in kilograms and grams here in the US. So I think about a half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. So If I weigh 200 pounds, that's 100 pounds of protein. If I weigh 150
100
pounds,
pounds.
that's, I'm sorry, if I weigh 200 pounds, that's 100 grams of protein. If I weigh 150 pounds, that's 75 grams of protein. And then a good rule of thumb.
That'd be a tiger diet, man. 100 pounds.
Yeah, I know, man. That's it. Exactly.
Let's do the BUN creatinine ratio. So this is something that we see often where this is off. So optimal range, I've got a couple pieces of literature here. Optimal range of BUN creatinine ratio is going to be 10 to 16. A lot of times we'll see this altered where the BUN creatinine ratio is high, where they're above 16. A couple notes could be antibiotics, could be dehydration, and then in bad cases, some type of GI bleeding. So that's not good. And then you've got low issues where your BN creatinine ratio is below 10. This would be issues like we see pretty often. So this would be liver dysfunction. Once again, antibiotics. Also, a diet that's low in protein. So a lot of older people, I mean, you and I work with a lot of people above age 50. So 50, 60, 70-year-olds, they eat less and less protein, it seems. They just forget that it's important. They start eating snack foods, or their appetite just goes down because they've got low stomach acid. So they just start to get a distaste for meat. So we've really got to use enzymes and HCl with them, ox bile, get their gallbladder working better, because if they don't have a taste for protein, it's going to be tough for us to say, you know, hey, Jack, hey, Jill, we've got to get you to eat more protein. So if you are having a BUN level that is low, or the BU creatinine ratio, the BUN creatinine ratio is low, you might have just a simple issue like not enough protein in the diet.
Oh, exactly. Yep, 100%. Now, we talked about creatinine. Now, I'm going to just crystallize BUN a little bit more. So we talked about creatinine going high, right? The potential dehydration as well, potential kind of catabolic physiology, right? That can be a big one. It could be a lot of creatine supplementation, right? That can be one aspect of going high. Just kind of keep that in mind. And then on the lower side, of course, will be the protein, right? The low protein, not getting enough of that in there is really, really important. And then on the BUN side, BUN's a blood urea and nitrogen. That's another breakdown product. On the high side, we look at hypochlorhydria. We can also look at adrenal and dysbiosis, right? And on the low side, it can be malabsorption, low protein, and low enzymes and liver issues. So there's a handful of different things that can be implicated either way. But I love those as a good rule of thumb of what's happening. And then we can also look at albumin and globulin. And if we see imbalances in the albumin and globulin, that can also mean issues with protein as well. So if we see like albumin or globulin, I think it's on the higher side for globulin and the lower side for albumin, we're also going to think of potentially more protein issues.
Yeah, so let's just be clear about the biomarkers here. You know, Justin and I are talking about functional ranges, not necessarily the conventional range. So you may get your blood work if you have it in front of you. You may look at that. It may look okay. It may actually be in range according to all the sick people that have been in that clinic. So we're talking about functional ranges. So even if something's not flagged low or high, we're using specific markers. Justin and I have taken some extra training in terms of functional blood chemistry analysis. So we've got a tighter reference range. So if you don't see anything out of range on your paper, it might not be, but the functional range is much, much, much tighter. And that's where we find the issues.
Exactly. Typically, it's going to be the bottom 50 or the bottom and top 15 to 20% we look at more frequently, like with some of the protein things, some of the albumin high or low. If it's on the high side, we may think dehydration. If it's on the low side, we may think low stomach acid or enzymes. And some of these markers kind of contradict themselves. So you want to kind of look at the complete picture so you can get a window of what's happening. So I mentioned some of the albumin there. Do you want to comment on that at all, Evan?
I was going to move on to the AST. I had the AST notes in front of me. Did you want to hit ALT and AST, the liver markers?
Yeah, let's hit that next. I wanted to comment one more thing on the globulin. So globulin is also one of those things for oxidative stress. So if we see globulin go on the high side, that can also mean oxidative stress. Oxidative stress are like, you know, free radical things, right? Oxidation is a loss of electrons. The more you're losing electrons, the more you want extra antioxidants to help support you out, whether it's antioxidant herbs like curcumin or resveratrol or green tea, or things like vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin E, those kind of things are really helpful. So we have albumin and globulin, we have creatinine, we have total protein, we have bond. Those are our big protein markers there.
Good.
All right,
Good.
so next, let's hit the liver enzymes.
Yeah, the AST, the ALT, I wanted to hit on these because, you know, for whether it's my grandparents or some of the in-laws, I'll always see markers off with AST and ALT, even outside of the conventional range. These are some of the markers that I'm going to see off. So let me give people a little bit of background on what they call the SGOT, also known as the AST. So this is an enzyme that's very, very, very prevalent in skeletal muscle, liver, heart, kidneys, and lungs. The enzyme can be liberated into the bloodstream following cell damage or destruction. So optimal range here is going to be 10 to 30 units of AST. If you're out of the range, so if you're too high, this could just be liver dysfunction. So some of the reasons Justin and I may look at your AST and it's high, it could be anything that's affecting the liver. So this could be parasites, this could be bacterial overgrowth, this could be yeast, this could be chemical toxins like glyphosate if your diet's not very rich in organic foods. This could be gasoline additives, which is why I got rid of a gas-powered car, because my gasoline additives were off the charts on my GPL toxic chemical profile test. You've got a potential for developing congestive heart failure. So if AST is above 30, so AST, if it's above 30, and then you've got these other symptoms like you have air hunger, you're yawning frequently, you've got some edema, some of that swelling in the ankles at the end of the day, you've got a little bit of shortness of breath with moderate exertion, that may point a picture to some congestive heart failure that's possible. Now, the good thing is a lot of that stuff's reversible, but these are just signs that things could go bad. And then on AST, you've got liver cell damage that's possible. So alcohol, that's huge. We see that a lot with previous alcoholics, people who are trying to get off alcoholics. If it's tied into the liver, you're thinking, if my AST is high, what's going on with my liver? Is that the problem? It could be. Symptoms would be pain between shoulder blades. You've got a headache sometimes over the eye. You've got those phase 2 liver detox problems, like you're sensitive to perfumes, or you're sensitive to fragrances, or you're sensitive to car exhaust fumes. That's a big one. Hemorrhoids, varicose veins, that's also tied into the liver. And excessive muscle breakdown. So if you're just doing a bunch of CrossFit exercise and then you got your blood work done, it's possible the AST could show up high there, and that's not a bad thing. And then we've got the low side of AST, which I won't take too long to go over, but B6 deficiencies, alcoholism. So B6, as we know, Justin and I have talked about it a million times, alcohol burns through some of your vitamin and mineral reserves. So B6 is one of them. And then once again, protein deficiency or malabsorption. So AST, either way, if it's high or low, you're out of that 10 to 30 functional range. We can find a lot of good information out about you.
Absolutely. So let's go see what ones have we reviewed so far. So we hit the liver enzymes, and again, liver, ALT, the alanine, the L part, that tends to be more liver, where the AS tends to be more on the heart side, tends to be more on the heart and the skeletal muscle side. So kind of keep that in the back of your head there when we're looking at these things. So a heart attack, we may see more of the AST elevated, and liver stress, more of the AST for the heart and the skeletal muscle, more liver for the ALT. But again, things like gluten can easily raise ALT. I've seen that. Also, just excessive exercise within 48 hours of a blood test could easily raise some of those enzymes as well. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, same thing. It sounds like I'd be repeating myself if we're going over ALT, but functional range for ALT, 10 to 30, once again, is the units. And if people had been doing a lot of aspirin, that could also cause the ALT to go up. So if you're just somebody who chronically pops aspirin, your ALT may go up there. Once again, alcohol is going to throw off your ALT. So pretty common sense, really. Anything that's going to affect liver.
And we may also see, we look at bilirubin too, which is a breakdown of a lot of the red blood cells. And if we have an excessive breakdown, we may look at potential gallbladder issues or liver gallbladder stuff going on. So we like, typically, below 1.2 or so is pretty good for the bilirubin and the gallbladder. If not, we may think there's some kind of gallbladder issue. We may look at food allergens. We may really up the bile salts and HCLs and lipolytic enzymes to really help the fat digestion.
Yep. Yep. We've got a little bit of time left. Should we answer some of these questions here?
Yeah, I think so. And the only thing I would say is some of the sodium and potassium and chloride, if we see some of the sodium low, we may think adrenal dysfunctions. If we see some of the potassium excessively high, right, we may think that's an adrenal pattern, low sodium, high potassium. If we see lower potassium in general, we may think you're not getting enough potassium, right? We need 4,700 milligrams of potassium a day. So we have to make sure that that is kind of dialed in. Same thing with the chloride. I mean, the real easy thing is with the minerals is number one, we're getting sea salt in our water, right? High quality sea salt in our water, half a teaspoon twice a day. We're eating lots of green vegetables, either cooked or juiced or made in a way so you can process it and digest it down, and then fix the adrenals. These are all things that are going to commonly be thrown off by adrenal and mineral imbalances, and sugar and insulin can also throw that off too, as well as adrenal dysfunction.
Well said.
Let's
We've
get those
got
questions up
here from, I believe it's Nalima. Do you have to worry about potassium intake if your blood work does not show a deficiency? If you're eating a pretty good paleo template, I mean, for example, you and I've chatted about our love for avocados, you're going to get much more potassium in avocados and bananas. So I think if you're eating an avocado a day or every couple of days, potassium is probably not an issue. What's your take?
Yeah, you're going to get one avocado, you'll get about 1 gram a day. You need 4,700 milligrams or 4.7 grams. So I would say if you're doing 6 servings of green vegetables a day and you're doing 1 avocado, you're probably going to be okay. But I would just throw it into Chronometer, put your height and your weight, and just ensure that you are getting that 4,700 milligrams, which again is really easy to not get. And again, that's the DRI, that's the daily recommended intake, not the RDA, which is the recommended daily allowance. So 4,700 milligrams, probably good with 2 servings, probably 6 servings of veggies and an avocado a day. You'll probably be okay, but just run it through Chronometer to double check.
Okay, cool. Samuel, a bit off topic. We'll do a whole show on this. How do you feel about making your home a smart home? Does it create negative effects from EMF, like adding Nest products and Philips Hue lights? Not a fan of LED lighting. I've chatted with Mercola about that on my podcast. And yes, the Nest and all the wireless technology, I do avoid that. I'm hardwired everything, no Wi-Fi, hardwired Ethernet. And funny enough, I'd been wanting to turn off the breaker to our bedroom so we could sleep better. And all of a sudden the power to the bedroom has been off, but all the breakers look fine. So I don't know if someone from the universe magically cut off the power to our bedroom, but even though the breakers look normal, there's no power in the bedroom. And I've been surprisingly sleeping way deeper. But we could do a whole show on that. But ideally you stay away from the wireless stuff, or you just turn down the intensity of your products if you can.
Yeah, no, I'm on the opposite side of that. I do have the Nest. I do love it. I think it's absolutely awesome. And again, for me, I have my Wi-Fi on a wireless timer. So once 11:30 hits, all my Wi-Fi goes off for the night. And that includes Nest and everything. So I set it up so during those hours of sleeping, they are not on, number one. Number two, I've used a very, very high-end EMF meter. And I've tested the Nest and such. And really, the EMF comes out in those first 10 feet or so away from it.
Yeah.
So, I've been across the room or sitting in my couch and I aim it right at it or to get kind of in its view. And you got to be pretty close to get that EMF out. You really do.
Distance. Yeah. I think your distance, you're probably much safer. I started doing the Wi-Fi on a timer and then I thought, well, hell, if I'm sleeping better without it, what am I sacrificing during the day being at home with it? So that's why I just went hardwired. Maybe I'll go back, but for now I'm hardwired and I feel pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, like for me, like I'm at the airport, I'm coming in and it's like my house is like 100 degrees. I'm like, ooh, let's get it cooled. Or like, we go away and then like if we're out of the house, right, it'll take the temperature up a little bit. So you save a little bit of money on that side of the fence. So there's pros and cons. I think if you can, like I'm hardwired in right now, but I think if you can put your thing on a Christmas tree timer at night, I think you really, you can at least have it off when you're sleeping, which I think is really important. I also sleep on a grounding mat and I have EMF blockers in my room as well.
Yeah, for sure. Let's keep going. Let's see what else we've got here. What are some blood test markers for thyroid issues? I believe we did a whole podcast on this.
Yeah, I would see the whole podcast on that. TSH, T4, T3, real quick, TSH, below 2.5, 1's ideal. T4 free, 1 to 1.5. T4 total, 6 to 10. T3 free at 3 and above to like 4.4. T3 total, 100 to like 150, 160. Again, go see the podcast on it. We've riffed on it for over an hour at a time, so check that out.
Yeah, another question is Redmond's real salt worth it if you're having pink Himalayan salt? I think so. I switch out. I have a lot of salts, Celtic sea salts. I've got all sorts of different types and flavors and sources. I think they're all helpful and they're not going to hurt you. It's in that category of my help, not going to hurt you.
Yeah, and I think Redmond's, in my opinion, just tastes better. It
It's good.
dissolves really well in the water, so you throw it in there, it dissolves really nice. I mean, I've used Himalayan and Celtic. It doesn't quite dissolve as good. Maybe there's a more, version that's ground up better, so it absorbs. It's more soluble in the water. But I like the Redmond's. I love the taste. Love it.
Yeah, it does taste good.
It's
Yeah.
very good.
The
And it's
Lima
lower
said,
in
"Thanks,
iodine
Dr. J.
too.
We do
So
the same. Turn off the Wi-Fi after 10." So that's cool. Like I said, I used to, but then I'm like, I'm gonna just get rid of Wi-Fi completely. Especially after I listened to Dr. Klinghardt talk about how you can't detox heavy metals if you're exposed to Wi-Fi, which is pretty interesting on his latest talk. I was like, whoa, that's pretty nuts. So
yeah, I mean, I think what happens is you get some people who are the exception to the rule.
yeah,
Regarding their high level of sensitivity. And then you get a lot of practitioners that had success with that one person. And then they start, this is the rule for everyone. But I think that's really excessive. But if you are chronically ill, should you try it? Heck yeah, you should try it.
yeah.
But it may not be the end all or be all. I mean, I love the convenience of having Wi-Fi. I don't notice that much of a difference, but I do know that, I'm sleeping at night. Maybe I'll get into a little bit deeper REM sleep. So I'm not using it at night. I get no benefit by keeping it on at night. So why not just turn it off, right?
Yep, for sure. We got a question from Vivek. He said, how to differentiate between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, any diagnostic test?
Yeah, I mean, type 1 is going to be an autoimmune condition. So what's going to happen is typically it's going to happen, in the first 12 to 13 years of life. That's when it mostly happens for kiddos. A dairy allergy tends to be behind it. But one of the big things that you're going to see is you're going to see just blood sugar just going up super, super high, right? The reason why it's going up super, super high is because the insulin isn't there by the beta cell. So it can't let the sugar get into the cell. So you see blood sugar come up super, super high. These people tend not to be big. They tend to be more small, I should say smaller, because they don't have the insulin bringing the sugar into their cell to get the fat up.
Yeah.
But then you can also run what's called the C-peptide test, which will look at the beta cell function of the pancreas. And if you see C-peptide on the lower side, then you'll know. And you can also run type 1 diabetes, and I think the beta cell antibodies you can run to also confirm that too, or pancreatic islet cell antibodies to confirm that. So there are different things you can do to assess it, but you're going to know because you're getting emaciated and your blood sugar's off the charts high for sure.
Yeah. Last question we can take here. Shayna, what does over a 115 vitamin D level mean? I don't take a vitamin D supplement. First, we got to make sure that's actually the vitamin D, not the 1,25. That's a kidney marker, but the 25 OH hydroxy vitamin D marker. You got to make sure it's that one. If it's that one and you don't supplement, I'm not too sure. I'll see if I can find something. Justin, what's your take?
Yeah, same thing. I would look at what the marker is. And then number two, maybe you're getting out in the sun a lot, or maybe one of your supplements there's some vitamin D in there and you're not aware of it, because that's pretty high to get to naturally. So maybe you're sunbathing a lot. Maybe that's totally natural. So I would just double check that and make sure that's the case. But double check if it's 25 versus the 125. That's the big thing I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, like my wife's prenatal, for example, there's a lot of vitamin D in there. There's other formulas that we've taken that have vitamin D. So you could really add up to 6 or 8 or 10,000 IU pretty quick. So yeah, I second that. Look at your protocol, make sure there's nothing in there.
Absolutely. Let me just knock off one more question here. So regarding alkaline phosphatase, yeah, less than 50 is low zinc. Again, alkaline phosphatase is an enzyme that correlates with zinc. So it's a metalloenzyme. So when that enzyme's lower, we tend to have lower zinc. You can also test it with a zinc tally test, get some zinc. I think it's zinc chloride or zinc sulfate. Yep. It's the liquid zinc. And then basically the better it tastes, the cleaner and the more like water it tastes, the less you need it. I'm sorry, the more you need it, the more you need it, the more metallic-y it tastes, and the more metal it tastes, the less you need it. So that's a good kind of rule over time to kind of look at. And then A1C, again, is a marker for blood sugar. If A1C is really low, right, we'd want to look at other markers to correlate anemia. So if we see MCV, MCH, MCHC on the higher side, that could mean some kind of B vitamin anemia. Or if we see RBC hematocrit hemoglobin low, that could be another indicator for an anemia.
Oh, we got one more question and then we'll have to wrap it up. It just gets addicting answering questions.
Yeah.
Abner, he has buddies telling him it's ideal to spike insulin before weight training. Is there any benefits to it? I mean, I've always thought the exact opposite, that you want to have a little bit of a spike after
Post-workout training.
weight training.
Post-workout. The reason why is insulin is incredibly anabolic. Most people that have high levels of insulin, it's anabolic in the terms of generating fat cells, right? Because anabolic means to grow. So they're growing fat cells. But if you can use insulin post-workout, you can basically have the key to drive protein into the cell. You're also driving, which is going to help with, you know, protein synthesis, ideally building more muscle. It's going to help spike mTOR. And then you're also going to have effects of driving sugar into the muscle, which it's just wrung out all that glycogen during the workout. So you replete the glycogen, which will have some anabolic effects, and it will it'll help lower the cortisol too. It'll drive down some of the cortisol, because the cortisol has made all this blood sugar. So it's going to pull all that sugar from the cortisol into the muscle, so it can be used to help generate hypertrophy.
Yep. I just did a little bit of research on vitamin D. If it's super high, it could be a buildup of calcium in the blood. So other symptoms that could go along with this could be poor appetite, nausea, vomiting, weakness, frequent urination, kidney problems. So maybe look at your other markers on your blood test, see if you've got anything off with your calcium, you've got anything off with some of the kidney markers. And then if you've got those other symptoms, frequent urination, things like that, definitely take a look.
Yeah, it's almost always from a supplement. So just stop taking the supplement, and it's a fat soluble vitamin. Your body will eventually clear it out in a few days to a few weeks.
Yeah, it should be pretty quick. Well, cool.
Awesome.
Any last things you wanted to say before we wrap it up? I think we did a great job on this one.
Yeah, this is, I think, probably my last podcast without a kiddo. So I'll be officially a dad next time that we are on the air. So pretty excited about that.
Me too. I'm pumped for you.
Yeah. Well, can you give me like one fatherly tip for advice here before we go?
My fatherly advice is just you take it day by day, and when something happens where you could see yourself stressing out, just remember you have the ability to control how you respond to something. So like when the baby's super fussy and you're trying to figure out, is he tired? Is he hungry? What is it? I just like take an extra second, and it's like, okay, let's run through the day. Okay, the last feeding was this. Okay, maybe it's a little too warm in here. Maybe it's a little too cold. Before I let my sympathetic nervous system kick into overdrive, I try to like walk through the situation step by step, and then, okay. And then that way I don't make myself sick by the extra stress.
Right. So instead of getting mad at the situation, you kind of like take a step back, like kind of problem solve, or think about what could be the issue before you have an emotional response. Is that kind of
exactly, dude? Try to not have the emotional response.
Right. Try to be more logical than emotional about it.
Yeah, which can be hard when you're tired and your sleep's interrupted and stuff like that, but you just get better and better every day at it.
I appreciate it, man. Excellent.
Yeah.
Hey, today was a great chat. Let's do more next, or probably in the next 2 weeks here, but maybe I'll jump on here while I'm on my little paternity leave here for the week.
No rush, man. You deserve it. You earned it. Take that paternity leave. We'll be here waiting for you when you get back. And if people want to schedule in the meantime with Justin, it may be a little bit till he gets back and he's back in the trench, but justinhealth.com, he will be ready and willing. And for me, evanbrand.com, you can schedule with either of us. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and we'll chat with you again soon.
There'll be a lot of sleep and downtime, so maybe I can sync one up in there so we can have a chat in between.
Sounds good.
All right, Evan. Hey, man, great chat. You have a great day.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.